It's often been said that this century will be the Asian century, and that the center of gravity of world affairs is moving west from here. There's little doubt that the directions taken by China and India and Indonesia and other major Asian countries will be the most consequential determinants of human affairs in the coming decades. We've come to expect remarkable economic dynamism and vertiginous change from those lands, but there are also some unexpected socio-cultural and political innovations from which we could learn a great deal. The extraordinary Arab Spring has reminded the world what grassroots self-organizing, extraordinary courage, and concerted collected effort can accomplish. China, Denmark, and Germany are leaving us here in the dust on the alternative energy fronts. In many domains, we in the US are finding that we have far more to learn than to teach these days. Our next speaker is certainly someone who could teach us a thing or two. From India, the world's largest democracy, Dr. Pam Rajput is one of the planet's leading advocates for women's rights and someone who has come up with strategic innovations that should make women leaders globally take note. She is a scholar and academic with a long, distinguished career and an internationally renowned activist who's been engaged in the women's movement since the mid-70s, both in India and globally. A recipient of many academic fellowships, she's served on many expert committees, including India's Planning Commission, Ministry of Women and Child Development, National Commission for Women, and many others. In 2000, she addressed the UN General Assembly special session on women at Beijing +5, where she was the only representative of the Asia-Pacific nations. She also has served as the Vice President of India's National Alliance of Women's Organizations and was the founder and director of the Center for Women's Studies, one of the first such institutions in India. Now she is an emeritus professor of political science, and she has published widely in the fields of gender, development, and politics. Professor Rajput is a leading figure at many of the most important international bodies on women's issues, including last year's UN Commission on the Status of Women. But her most remarkable achievement may be the Women's Parliament that she organized in India in 2009. When I first heard her at a UN conference on the status of women, I was electrified. All the other talks that I had heard reported on tiny incremental advances for women the world over, and I found them brain and heart numbing. I thought when I heard her of the Buckminster-Fuller idea that to evolve beyond an outmoded or decaying system, you've got to create a viable alternative so that it can be there to replace it when the old system crumbles. One might consider this convening of an alternative or shadow legislative body as a purely symbolic gesture, but let me remind you that women in the US currently represent just 17% of the House and Senate, a number that has not increased since 1972. Worldwide, only 18.5% of members of national parliaments are women. Now, a parliament filled with uncorrupted and tactful leaders, mostly free from sex scandals or grotesque behavior, and intent on actually serving their constituents' needs and solving their nation's problems, offers a stunning counterpoint to the venal and corrupt cesspools that most legislatures around the world have devolved into, right? But I'm going to let Dr. Pam tell you that story. Please join me in welcoming all the way from India, the Speaker of the Women's First Parliament and one of the planet's great advocates for the advancement of women, Professor Pam Rajput.
dear sisters and brothers, please excuse my bad throat, of the Bioneers family, I would first like to congratulate Nina and her entire team for organizing this wonderful conference. And I'm grateful to them for inviting me to be with you, one of you, thinking of the great Mother, the Earth. Well, friends, I bring greetings from my sister women parliamentarians and my sisters from the country to you all, and they connect with you through this discourse that we are going to have today. But before that, I want to pay my tribute to Wangari Maathai, the Nobel laureate, who started the green movement in Kenya and who is no more with us today. We remember her with gratitude. We like to celebrate the three great women who have just won the Nobel Peace Prize. And also I would like to pay tribute to the sisters who in remote corners of the world, unnoticed, unrecognized, contribute to the sustenance of this earth so that this earth is a planet living worth for the posterity. And I pay tribute to the Bioneers who are making it possible for this dialogue and sharing. As I rise to speak before you, I must say that I come from a land about which Mark Twain once said that India is a cradle of human race, the birthplace of human speech, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. I was very happy to note yesterday that Gloria mentioned India twice, and I would like to again reiterate what Gandhiji said, the apostle of peace. There is enough in the nature to meet our needs, but there is not enough to meet our greed. You have had wonderful presentations here, and I have been hearing every presentation very carefully since yesterday. But what I want to say is that we also need a different kind of a breed, I'm using the word breed, different kind of breed, who are the policy makers. And it is in this context that we thought of our women's parliament. My brothers will excuse me if I say, we have had enough, let sisters take over. Before I present to you my views about the parliament, I'd like you to have the glimpses of Indian Women's Parliament, and then I start with glimpses of Indian Parliament. for the last 4 days for this Women's Parliament, but we know that we have been here in spirit for the last 1 year. This whole Parliament of 4 days was a wonderful experience. It was an experience because it's a proud moment for all of us. We had Speaker, we had Deputy Speaker, we had Prime Minister, we had Deputy Prime Minister, we had Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, we had MPs, both parties, and all women for the first time. Again, a historic moment that
I am privileged to have been given this opportunity to present the presidential address. Only when Parliament is inclusive of the people it represents. The Women's Parliament, as conceived, provides an alternate space and vision for the country as a challenge to the systems of patriarchy and the dominant economic neoliberal capitalism.
I rise to present the budget for 2009 to 2010. We believe in an economy that promotes happiness of people, but not just material production. To measure the happiness of people, the current economy measurements like GDP, gross domestic products, are inadequate. As a first time in the world history, the first Women's Parliament adopts a new measurement, that is GNH, gross national happiness, along with the conventional methods. We believe that our national happiness is based on sustainable development, social justice, conservation of nature, and good governance. We do not believe in the accumulation of arms race, huge costly standing army, atomic power, and other hi-fi war technology for ensuring peace. Rather, we believe in cultural ties with neighboring.
Those who are in favor may say yes. Yes. Those who are against say no. Since majority of the people, rather there is almost unanimity in the House, ayes have it, ayes have it, ayes have it. Who says women can't be good leaders? How much talent, how much resource, how much views, diversity of views that you had. So it was such a participatory. Thank you, friends. Well, I will divide my presentation into 3 parts. Why Women's Parliament? How the Women's Parliament, and where do we go from here? When I say why Women's Parliament, we are in the 21st century. And the whole development paradigm that we are having around in the name of globalization is dividing the nations and dividing the people. Around us, what do we see? We witness disasters and conflicts. Disasters which are again human-made, and the result is we witness around poverty, we witness hunger, malnutrition, scarcity of food, scarcity of water, violence and insecurity everywhere. Since World War II, even when we had the United Nations formed to secure the succeeding generations from the scourge of war, we already have had 250 wars, some of them genocidal in nature. Can you believe that 200 million people have been killed? 10 million are refugees, 26 are internally displaced, 26 million are internally displaced persons. Gender-based sexualized violence is rampant. Not to go far, in Rwanda itself, close to 500,000 women were raped. So is the story of Bosnia, and so is the story of Congo. Defense budgets are on the increase. The military expenditure is 1.6 trillion. And exports of arms and ammunition continues to be on the rise. Nowhere is the peace. No place on earth is secure. The world is terrorized. And the other scenario, the disasters resulting into earthquakes, nuclear leaks. We know what happened in Japan recently. Floods, drought. I will not go into the figures, but just say that global warming itself has resulted into 300,000 deaths. Food scarcity, as I mentioned, water scarcity, and all is terrible. Once I was addressing the commission on this status of women in New York, and I said, this whole globalization, what does Miss World want? Pepsi Cola. And what does this Miss Universe want? Pepsi and colas. But what does the poor women back home want? Just safe drinking water. And friends, you will be shocked to know that 925 million people go to sleep hungry. 925 million. 1,345 million in the developing countries live on less than $1 a day. Every 3.6 seconds, someone dies of hunger. So you can imagine, since the time we are here for the Bioneer conference, how many people have died. Just multiply that. I'm bad in mathematics. Every year, 15 million children die of hunger. And also, friends, this is a fact, that with the price of one missile, a school full of hungry children can eat lunch for 5 years just for the price of a missile. That 100 million children who died in the last decade, their lives could have been, saved from this death for the price of 10 stealth bombers, or what could be called the military expenditure for 2 days. With that, we could have saved the lives of 100 million people. And my country's condition is no different. The question is, what is this development that we are talking about? India and China are also in race. What is this development that we are talking about? What is this globalization that we are talking about? According to our traditional Indian culture, globalization was Vasudeva Kutumbakam. That is, the whole, humanity is one village. But what has happened is this kind of a development has created a pyramid with multi and billions at the bottom who are poor and very few, MNCs and all rich at the top. And this whole water that we drink in the bottles, it has become a multi-millionaire, billionaire industry over this thing. In our country, when somebody is thirsty, when you would offer water, it was considered as something good, that when you go to, up, you will go to heaven, that is. But now you have to buy water. That is the kind of development that we are in for. Now the question is, it is good to say, let us save nature, nature is this, but as I said in the beginning, the question is that we are governed by the policy makers. And who are the policy makers and where are the women? Nina was rightly referring to. In 1995, when the Fourth World Conference of Beijing women was held in Beijing, there were only 11.8% women in the decision-making bodies, only 11.8. And as of today, 2011, the percentage has just increased to 19%, 19 point something, that percentage has increased. And in India, the percentage of women in the parliament is only 10%. We have reservation in the local bodies, which is 33%, and close to 1 million women are elected. But the question is, in the higher decision-making bodies, only 10% women are there. Every election, on the eve of election, we have the manifestos, and there is a promise that we will be given 33%. But the kind of politics we have, the politics of mafias, the politics of muscle, the politics of money, it doesn't let the women come over there. So we continue to face this challenge. And as Bella Abzug from the United States once said, we are not entering the polluting waters, but we are entering to clean the polluting water. So it is very important that the women are over there. We have to reverse these policies. Unless we do that, we cannot really sustain our this approach that we are talking about. So as we are not getting a chance, we thought of, we must have a space. We call it as an alternate space with an alternate vision. And this, as we started, we thought we must have women's own parliament. And how do we have this women's parliament? My organizational National Alliance of Women, we thought we must have women's parliament not by nominating, but by electing women. Electing women by women. And this is a picture which shows how the women have been, we toured the country, whole of country. We have 543 constituencies. And in these 543 constituencies, we toured and we elected women by women. After electing them, we gave them training in the parliamentary procedures. And once the training had been done, I'm looking at the time also, training had been done, we enacted the parliament. This whole process took us 1 year. So 543 constituencies we got, and it was an historic movement in 2009 when from 5th November to 9th of November, we held the parliament in Delhi. And this parallel parliament that we had, where we had, of course, the speaker. I was given that honor to be elected as speaker. We had the prime minister, leader of the opposition, and whatnot. And in this parliament, I can tell you, we had the mechanisms of all the real parliament, as you saw the glimpses. We had the question hour, 0 hour, the bills being introduced and bills being debated and policy documents being placed. But what is important, I want to repeat again, of course, you saw the glimpse of that the budget that we presented was different from the budgets that usually are presented. Our budget was not based on GDP, because our country, I always question my country also, that what development are you talking about when 340 million people sleep without a meal at night? What is this development? So we deviated from that GDP and we said we must have the gross national happiness as the index, and we translated it. And we translated it by saying that this gross national happiness means sustainable development, social justice, conservation of nature, and good governance. These were the basic principles. And on the basis of that, we try to translate it into reality, what can be our revenue and what can be our expenditure. In fact, it was given such a wide coverage in the media that our budget was compared with the national budget and say that how real the budget can be, which is in the interest of humanity at large. And this is a budget which questioned the very development paradigm. This is a budget which questioned that how the existing budgets create a gap between the haves and have-nots, and poor becoming poorer and rich only occupying the few positions. So that is what it was. And what is important also is to say that what our parliament spends in one day, 1/10 of that we spent in doing the whole process. 1/10 of that. In the election, in the training, and conducting the parliament for 4 days, we spent only the 1/10 of what our parliament spent in one day in the national parliament, sometimes without transacting, only doing this, and getting out. Well, friends, indeed it was an exciting affair for me and my sisters who were elected as parliamentarians. Our attempt is now to spread the movement. India is a federal country, so we are going ahead with the state assemblies also and making our demands. But the challenge has been there, and the challenge has been of, time, but more than that, the resources, because we had meager resources to organize this. And we are looking forward when soon we can have the second women's parliament. But I must say that when we had the South Asian Assembly, South Asian countries have agreed to do a South Asian Assembly of Women. And this year, friends, we had an event in New York during the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, and I have appealed that we should have gradually, I invoke you to do the parliament, and let us have a global women's parliament. So that we can spell out our discourse, so that we can have a charter of women world citizens. We are citizens of the world. We have also a right to say what kind of world we want to live in, and we must have that. I'm sure the day will come. I've shortened my speech for that reason, but I'm available for discussion anywhere outside. I'm sure that the day will come, and I call upon especially the young pioneers who are here to be the torchbearer of this movement. Sustainable development, equality, and peace may have been the shared dream, but there is a difference between the dreamers that makes all the difference. And let's, friends, make the difference who all are here. And let's have a world where we live in harmony with nature. Let's have a world where inequality is absent from every country based on class, gender, and race. Let's have a world where the basic needs become the basic rights of the people. Let's have a world where poverty and all forms of violence are eliminated. Let's have a world where we do not cut the trees and where women do not sell their bodies or their children to satisfy their hunger. Let's have a world where women's values of nurturance and solidarity characterize the human relationships. I believe in you. Let the East meet the West, and let's join hands together. It's time for me to conclude, and let me say that I am a dreamer, and I'm sure each one of you is, Let us together realize the dream. And let me conclude by saying, coming together, we relive our dreams and share our experience. Taking forward the energy, we celebrate new beginnings, new hopes. Thank you very much.